What's going on, guys? It's Nutsack MMA and we're back here today with a new video. This is going to be my top 15 UFC fighters of all time. Code word I said UFC fighters in case someone asks why isn't Fedor here. To be honest, I wouldn't have Fedor here either way, but anyways, so going into my list is pretty well thought out. The things that matter the most to me is resume, then after resume, legacy, then after legacy, accolades, because accolades don't matter that much in my opinion if you're not beating good competition. I am gonna have something called all-time wins. What an all-time win is just a fighter who is top 15, top 20 all-time that they have beaten, and that matters a lot as well. Matters a lot who you beat and how many losses you have as well, of course. But yeah, so let's get into it. Coming in number 15, we got Dominic Cruz, the bantamweight GOAT, 4 title wins, 3 title defenses. Best wins, Demetrius Johnson, young Demetrius Johnson, but still Demetrius Johnson, so it is an all-time win. TJ Dillashaw, Uriah Faber twice, and Pedro Munoz, and he beat him as an old head, which is still a pretty good win. Only losses are to Henry Cejudo, but I don't really look at that much because Dominic Cruz took that fight on like a week's notice off the couch. Cody Garbrandt, that one weird loss, and then Marlon Vera, that head kick KO. But yeah, he's done really good in his career. Dominic Cruz, I really like him a lot, and he's 15 just because he lacks a little bit of more good wins. But I do have him at 15 because he's the bantamweight GOAT in my opinion, and I do think it's debatable, but yeah. Moving on to the next person. Coming in number 14, we got Israel Adesanya. Now I do think he's a little overrated when it comes to the GOAT conversation. He has good wins, all-time wins against Alex Pereira, but he also lost to Alex Pereira, so they're 1-1. Beaten Rob Whittaker twice. Second one was arguably a robbery. Yoel Romero fight, super boring, arguably a robbery. Jared Cannonier, Marvin Vettori fight. He did school them, but it wasn't that dominant of a performance. Paulo Costa, dominant win. Anderson Silva, Derek Brunson, Kelvin Gastelum, all good wins. He has been outstruck before though, unfortunately. Alex Pereira knocked him out. Sean Strickland severely outstruck him, and Jan Blachowicz as well, of course. But he is he does have 7 title wins and 5 title defenses, which is still super impressive, which is why he's at number 14. But yeah, anyways, we're gonna move on to the next person. Coming in number 13, we got Khabib. I do think Khabib's pretty overrated. I just think he needs better wins in my opinion. He beat Dustin, Conor, Gaethje, RDA, Edson Barboza, and Ale Quinta. Those are pretty good wins, but in my opinion, everyone above him has a better resume than him or has better accolades than him. He only has 4 title wins, 3 title defenses. Now, I do understand that he is undefeated, but there's a lot of undefeated fighters in the UFC, and they wouldn't be on here. So I wouldn't put Khabib any higher, in my opinion. But I do think he was one of the most dominant fighters of all time. Always destroyed his competition. I think I would be higher if he had a win maybe like Tony Ferguson, or if he moved up to welterweight and had a win like Kamaru Usman or Colby Covington. Then we could put him into the top 10. Yeah, but he doesn't have any all-time wins. But he is the no, he's not the lightweight GOAT. What am I saying? We'll talk about that later, but he is not the lightweight GOAT. He was lightweight champion though. But yeah, Khabib's still good, but I do think he's a little overrated when it comes to the GOAT conversation. So moving on to number 12, we got Alex Pereira. Now I do think Alex Pereira, with his last win over Yuri, I do think Alex Pereira with his last win over Yuri did surpass Khabib, just because Alex Pereira has such good quality with his wins. He's beaten Izzy. He's also lost to Izzy though, unfortunately. But he was at middleweight, and that's not his natural weight class, so he shouldn't have been fighting there. But it is still a loss, so we are going to count it. He's beaten Yuri twice though, Jamal Hill, Sean Strickland, Jan Blachowicz. That is 5 champions, and one of them he's beaten twice, which is crazy. He's been a double champ, and he has an all-time win, which is Izzy. So super impressive resume, better resume than Khabib in my opinion. I know he does have that one loss, but it's to Izzy, and Izzy's also on this list, so it's not that bad of a loss in my opinion. And but yeah, Alex is super good, and I think he beats Magomed Ankalaev, and I do think he could be a triple champ, which would be pretty crazy, and that would put him even higher. But anyways, moving on to the next person. Coming in number 11, we got Islam Makhachev. Now I do think Islam is the lightweight GOAT. Shit, my bad. Okay. Now, I do think Islam is the lightweight GOAT. The only reason I have him above Khabib and Alex Pereira is because he has 2 all-time wins against Volkanovski. And while Alex does have a win against Izzy's number 14, and I'm going to have Volk in my top 5, spoiler alert. And he has 2 wins over him. First win, legit win over decision. I know the second win, Volk was coming in on short notice, but he did what you're supposed to do to a short notice fighter, knocked him out in 1 round. So that's still super impressive. Charles Oliveira, top 20 fighter of all time. That could be an all-time win as well. Dustin Poirier just beat him, outstruck him, and subbed him with staph infection, might I add. Ran through Dan Hooker, Bobby Green, Drew Dober, and has a win over Arman Tsarukyan. I'm not going to act like that doesn't exist. I know it was his first fight, but still, it's a win over Arman Tsarukyan. He does have that one weird loss to Adriano Martins. It was kind of like a fluke KO, but I'm not going to look into that too deeply. He's a lightweight GOAT, 4 title wins, 3 title defenses, has as many wins and stuff as Khabib, but I just think he has a better resume than Khabib, so I put him over Khabib in my opinion. But anyways, we're going to move on to the next person, number 10. Whew. Coming in at number 10, we have, in my opinion, the most overrated fighter in UFC history, Anderson Silva. No all-time wins. He's the middleweight GOAT, 11 title wins, 10 title defenses, 16 fight win streak. That's honestly the only reason he's top 10. Because of his accolades, they're so good, but his resume is not all that. It's pretty bad, actually. I wouldn't say it's bad. He does have good wins, but like Dan Henderson, Vitor Belfort, like those guys are like top 50 UFC fighters of all time. Chael Sonnen twice. Chael Sonnen was beating his ass. Demian Maia, Forrest Griffin, Rich Franklin. Like Kamaru Usman has a win over Demian Maia, and that's like his 10th best win. This is like Anderson Silva's 3rd best win. And not to mention all the losses. Chris Weidman twice. I know the second one was an injury, but he did get knocked out clean by Chris Weidman. Michael Bisping, DC, Izzy, Jared Cannonier, and Uriah Hall. I do count those, and I do take those into account. We're not just looking at prime. We're looking at career. But yeah, Anderson Silva, super overrated. He's not top 5 by any means. His accolades carry him. His resume is weak. It's not that good. Rich Franklin, Forrest Griffin, like Derek Brunson is actually one of his best wins. Keep that into account. Izzy, who was at number 14, Derek Brunson is like his 10th best win ever. Anderson Silva's win is like, that's like his 5th best win, dude. Like, his accolades carry him. I do think he's just super overrated, but I'm not going to get too mad about it. So, moving on to the next person coming in, number 9, we got the heavyweight GOAT himself, Stipe Miocic. 2 all-time wins against DC. Win against Francis Ngannou, super impressive, schooled him. Only person to ever beat Ngannou in the UFC, I think, besides arguably, I mean, if you count the win against Gane, but I don't. I think Ngannou won that fight. Has a win against JDS, Werdum. Both of those guys were champions. Overeem, one of the best non-champions in history. Mark Hunt and Andrei Arlovsky, 2 decent wins as well. He does have a couple losses, but to DC, Ngannou, JDS, and Steven Struve after he got eye poked. So I don't look into that too deeply, but he's up here because he is the heavyweight GOAT, and he does have 2 all-time wins against DC, which is super impressive. But yeah, not much else to say about him. So moving on to the next person coming in, number 8, we got Jose Aldo. Doesn't have any all-time wins, but he has a bunch of good wins. Frankie Edgar twice, Chad Mendes twice, TKZ, Kenny Florian, Ricardo Lamas, Fernando Moicano, Chito Vera, Rob Font, Jonathan Martinez, Pedro Munoz, and Marlon Moraes. I do think that was a brutal robbery, so I'm going to count that as a win. The only reason I have him, Jose Aldo, so low, I know he was a dominant champion and his accolades are pretty good, but the only reason I have him so low is because of he lost a lot in his prime. Like, I know Anderson Silva has a lot of losses, but he never lost in his prime. In his prime, he was undefeated. He only lost when he became old. He was like 38 when he lost all these guys. I still count it, but Jose Aldo lost in his early 30s, which is not as acceptable. He got knocked out by Conor McGregor, knocked out by Max Holloway twice, beat by Volkanovski, Peter Yan, and Merab. But how do I put this? I don't think they beat Jose Aldo because he wasn't as good as he was. I just think that they were always better than Jose Aldo, and I think the best version of Volk beats the best version of Aldo. The best version of Max always beats the best version of Aldo, and that's just my opinion. So I have him at number 8. I love Aldo though; he's super good. Anyways, moving on to the next person coming in at number 7, we got Kamaru Usman. Now, Kamaru doesn't have any all-time wins either, but he's a bunch of good wins. Colby Covington twice, Jorge Masvidal twice, Gilbert Burns, Tyron Woodley, RDA, Damian Maia, Leon Edwards, and Sean Strickland when he was. Both these were they were young, but they're still wins, so I'm still gonna count them. Still super good wins. He has 2 losses. Leon Edwards twice. Maybe you could argue the second one was a fluke, but I would argue that it wasn't because then he beat him another time. And I would argue that Leon Edwards beats Kamaru every time that they're not in altitude. And he has that arguable loss to Hamza Chimaev. I do think it was a draw though, 10-8 first round, but Kamaru won the next 2 rounds. So I don't think it was a real loss. I think it was a draw. And it was still super impressive because Kamaru's moving up a weight class, coming on short notice, but we're not going to talk about that. Welterweight champion, 6 title wins, 5 title defenses, 15 fight win streak, which is the second best in UFC history. But I do think it was more impressive than Anderson Silva's win streak because it was against better competition. But yeah, moving on to the next person. Coming in at number 6, we got Max Blessed Holloway. Now, this is going to be a little controversial, but yes, I have Max Holloway over Jose Aldo because, first of all, Max Holloway beat Jose Aldo twice for a title. And I know you're going to say just because he beat him doesn't mean he's better than him. But Jose Aldo was still a super good version of himself that fought Max, who was before his prime, and got destroyed by him twice. So I just think that Max always beats Aldo. And I do think Max has a better resume than Aldo. And I do think Max would have been a dominant champion than Aldo if Volkanovski didn't exist. And that's basically just saying, like, if my grandma had a dick, she'd be my grandpa. But it is what it is. 2 all-time wins, Jose Aldo twice. Yair Rodriguez, good win. Recently just moved up a weight class, beat Justin Gaethje, schooled him. Really impressive performance. Brian Ortega, Calvin Kattar, 2 of the most impressive striking performances of all time. Arnold Allen, TKZ, Anthony Pettis, Frankie Edgar, beat all those guys. Holds the record for most significant strikes landed in UFC history, and most total strikes landed in UFC history, and most total strikes landed in UFC history by being a striker, which is also super impressive. And he's number 1 in significant strikes by a wide margin. I think the next isn't even close to him. But yeah, I think the next one is actually Sean Strickland. But yeah, obviously losses. Volk 3 times, Dustin twice. The first Dustin win I don't look into account. The second Dustin win was actually more competitive than people think. It was a 48-47 to Dustin. But keep in mind, Max Holloway was moving up a weight class on short notice. He also has losses to Conor McGregor, Dennis Bermudez back when he was like 20 years old, so I don't really count those either. But in his prime, he hasn't lost to anyone, like, been schooled by anyone besides Volkanovski, who's going to be higher. But yeah. Anyways, moving on to the next person. Coming in at number 5, we got Daniel DC Cormier. All-time wins. He does have an all-time win against Stipe Miocic. Now, the reason I have DC so high, I could put him lower, but the reason I have him so high is because he only lost to the best fighters. He lost to Stipe twice. He also beat Stipe while he was like 45 years old or something, which is crazy. And his only 2 losses to Jon Jones, but one of them was arguably no contest because he was on steroids for that fight. But yeah, good wins. Stipe Miocic, Anthony Johnson twice, Gustafsson, Derek Lewis, Volkanovski, Anderson Silva. Best accolades. He was a double champ, which is also why he's so high. Super impressive, and he does have an all-time win. He has 6 title wins, and I do think, like Max Holloway, if Jon Jones didn't exist, DC would be one of the most dominant champions of all time, because I don't think anyone else beats him besides Jon Jones. I mean, clearly, not in a light heavyweight. His only loss was to Jon Jones, but yeah, so that's the only reason I didn't have DC up higher, but yeah. I mean, lower. Coming in number 4, we got Volk. Now, I know it's a little controversial, but Volk has the most all-time wins out of any fighter of all time. He has Max Holloway 3 times and a win over Jose Aldo. And before you say Jose Aldo wasn't in his prime, after losing to Volk, Jose Aldo moved to bantamweight and got a bunch of good ranked wins and fought for a title. And he was about to fight for another title again after fighting Merab. Unfortunately, he lost to Merab, but he stuffed all of Merab's takedowns. And people say that Jose Aldo apparently just wasn't good anymore. And Volk schooled him. He did what he's supposed to do. So I think that was still a really good version of Aldo, even if you don't think he was at his best. But His best wins: Max Holloway 3 times, of course, Jose Aldo, Yair Rodriguez, Brian Ortega, TKZ, one of the most one-sided beatdowns in UFC championship history. Chad Mendes, another really elite win, and Darren Elkins, that's a decent win. Now, the only reason the 3 people above him are higher is just because Volk has been slept out twice recently, unfortunately, by Ilia Topuria and Islam Makhachev. I know he took the Islam fight off short notice, but it does count against his legacy, unfortunately, and he has the first loss against him on short notice. However, I do think that loss is more impressive than it is. I know what I'm saying, like, a loss is more impressive than a win, but, like, he just showed how tough he was. He showed he just showed sorry guys, he just showed that how skilled he was, truly. Everyone thought Islam was gonna run him over. Volk gave Islam the toughest fight of his entire life. Not even Charles or Dustin could give him a tougher fight. And people always say, Islam needs to fight a lightweight. Well, he fought 2 lightweights and beat them better than he did the featherweight. The featherweight gave him the toughest fight. So he's the featherweight GOAT. Don't think that's a debate. I don't even know how people think Aldo is the best. But yeah, so I have him at number 4. And the only reason people are higher than him is because they don't have as many losses. So, moving on. Coming to number 3, we got Mighty Mouse Johnson. No all-time wins, unfortunately, but he was super dominant. 12 title wins, 11 title defenses, which is the most all-time UFC flyweight GOAT. And I do understand his resume is a little weak, but to be fair, he was fighting the best in his division. So it was nothing he could really do about it. However, I do think he would be higher. I think he could be above GSP, who's going to be next. Spoiler alert. I do think he could have been above GSP if he beat guys like Davison Figueiredo or Brandon Moreno. But his best win was against Henry Cejudo, who also beat him. Second fight was super close, but still. Joseph Benavidez, okay. John Dodson, Ray Borg, Tim Elliott. Tim Elliott was not that good of a win back then. I don't know why I even put that on good wins. But he doesn't really have many losses. Henry Cejudo barely lost. Dominic Cruz, back when he was like 20 years old. Flyweight GOAT, most title defenses of all time, and most title wins. Super impressive, and one of the most skilled martial artists of our generation. But anyways, so I still think it's impressive. Moving on to the next person, we got GSP. Now, I know GSP's resume is a little weak, but look at all those accolades, dude. Number 1 amount of control time in UFC history, number 1 amount of takedowns landed in UFC history, and second in most total strikes landed in UFC history, second to Max Holloway. Now, accolades: a UFC welterweight GOAT. He's the welterweight GOAT. I think he's better than Usman. He was also a middleweight champion. He was a double champ. Keep that in mind. Good wins: Matt Hughes twice. Super impressive win. You could argue that's an all-time win. Matt Hughes is arguably a top 20 fighter of all time. Carlos Condit, super decent win. Nick Diaz, Michael Bisping, champion. BJ Penn, twice. BJ Penn still a super good win, and it was before he went on the losing streak. Now, he did lose to Matt Hughes, but he didn't beat him twice, so he won the trilogy. Lost to Matt Serra, but also beat Matt Serra, and arguably lost to Johnny Hendricks. I think he did. But he was also at the end of his title reign. So, yeah, and, you know, GSP is just one of the most dominant champions ever. I feel like everyone should have him at number 2 on their list, and everyone should have the next person number 1 on their list, who is Jon Jones. Now, I know Jon Jones is a little bit controversial with all the steroids and beating his wife and hit and run pregnant ladies, but Jon Jones is the best mixed martial artist of all time. 2 all-time wins against TC, even if you don't count the second one. He still beat him the first time by decision, which is super impressive. 2 wins against Gustafsson, even if you don't count the second one, he beat him once. So either way, he still has a win over both guys. Win over Glover, which is a super impressive win because Glover actually ended up being champion. Thiago Santos, Lyoto Machida, Shogun Rua, Rashad Evans, Rampage Jackson, Vitor Belfort, Anthony Smith, and Cyril Gane. Now, I do count the Dominic Reyes fight as a loss. I think that was one of the worst robberies in UFC history. I don't understand how people could think that Jon won any of the first 3 rounds. So I do count that as a loss. But even with that loss, it was still a close fight. Like, GSP got finished by Matt Serra. Jon Jones lost 48-47 to a hungry contender who was undefeated at the time. Now, I know Dominic Reyes doesn't have a chin anymore, but at the time, Dominic Reyes was an elite fighter. So let's not just put that aside, I'm saying. But yeah, Jon Jones is a double champ, which is also super impressive. Most title wins and most title defenses of all time. Yeah, but I feel like everyone should have Jon Jones #1. So yeah, that's my list, and see you guys in the next video. Peace out. Bye.